Hello and welcome to the Commander's Quarters, your Magic the Gathering source that helps you command your budget. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. We also have a ton of brand new t-shirt designs in stock, so make sure you check out those as well. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG Player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support. Hey everyone, Mitch coming in for the Commander's Core Studio. Welcome to the show. So, in case you weren't aware, yeah, I didn't get the memo either. Apparently, spoiler season just began this week because, well, we got the charms earlier this week, and then today, we got a couple of commanders, including Lord Xander, which is an absolutely brutal commander, so if you want to see what Lord Xander the Collector does, make sure you check that episode out at some point. Okay, and about spoiler season actually starting. That was supposed to be a joke. It hasn't started technically, but we keep getting spoiler after spoiler after spoiler, including this one, Jetmir, Nexus of Revels. That's right, the new Naya commander is here. And this commander definitely lives up to its name as the Nexus of Revels. This commander seems like it's going to be a ton of fun. Now, before we jump into the episode, though, a big thank you to Eddie for all your help during spoiler season, and also if I make any mistakes on this episode or any other episode, make sure you blame Eddie, because it's always Eddie's fault, not mine. So with all that said, let's jump into it. Jetmir Nexus of Revels is a 5/4 cat demon that costs 1 red, green, white. It says creatures you control get +1/+0 and have vigilance as long as you control 3 or more creatures. It also has creatures you control also get +1/+0 and have trample as long as you control 6 or more creatures. And as you can see, there's a pattern here because now creatures you control also get +1/+0 and have double strike as long as you control 9 or more creatures. So the more and more creatures that you get out, the more and more benefits that you get from this commander. At 3, you're getting +1/+0 and vigilance. At 6, you're essentially getting +2/+0 and trample as well as vigilance. And at 9 creatures, you get +3/+0, double strike, trample, and vigilance. Those are massive pump effects that can help you just smack your opponents for a ton when you've got this commander in play and once you've built up your army. And yeah, in Naya, in these colors especially, you've got a ton of ways to get a lot of creatures onto the board, and you can just start swinging out at your opponents left and right, having a great old time. I mean, I can even see some incredibly spicy plays where maybe you swing and you've got a certain number of creatures and your opponents are like, oh, okay, well, +2/+0 trample and vigilance is a lot, but still I can take that damage. Then all of a sudden you maybe cast an instant that makes some tokens, and now you're at 9 creatures, and now all your creatures get an extra +1/+0, and they have double strike out of nowhere. Yeah, and now I'm out of breath because I'm so excited talking about this card. Regardless, let's talk about some cards that work very well with Jetmir that you might want to consider if you want to build a deck around it. First up, of course, we've got some creatures that can help make more creatures with cards like Tendershoot Dryad, Dragonlair Spider, and of course, Avenger of Zendikar. Tendershoot Dryad is a 2/2 that has Ascend, and at the beginning of each upkeep, create a 1/1 green sapling creature token, and on top of that, saplings you control get +2/+2 as long as you have the City's Blessing. Now, a long time ago, I was at a pre-release playing this card, and I didn't realize that it said each upkeep, and yeah, I missed out on some saplings, so don't do that, because on every single upkeep, including your opponent's, you get a sapling creature token. So yeah, getting that City's Blessing is absolutely no big deal at all. So you're going to have some 3/3 saplings in no time, and you're going to flood the board with a ton of creatures. Literally with just this and your commander on the table with 2 trips around the table, and you're playing in a 4-player game, you get 8 saplings. So that already meets that final requirement for your commander to have 9 creatures in play. So with the City's Blessing as well, you're going to have your 3/3 saplings getting +3/+0, so another 6/3 saplings that have double strike, vigilance, and trample. So yeah, I would say that this card is pretty good with this commander. Moving on, Dragonlair Spider, another fantastic card, a 5/6 with reach that says whenever an opponent casts a spell, create a 1/1 green insect creature token. Obviously, this one can go even faster than Tender Shoot Dryad at making tokens, depending on what your opponents are doing. If they're casting a bunch of spells, you're going to be getting a ton of insects. And of course, you also have a creature that has an ETB like Avenger of Zendikar that can just make a ton of tokens at once. This one has, when it enters the battlefield, create a 0/1 green plant creature token for each land you control. And of course, on top of that, whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you can put a +1 counter on each plant creature you control. So yeah, on top of obviously having creatures that can add to your total, you obviously have plenty of ways in these colors to make creature tokens to add to your total even quicker. Speaking of which, of course, you've got some incredibly efficient spells that can almost make some tokens as well, like Spectral Procession, Secure the Waste, and Call the Copper Coats. Spectral Procession says put 3 1/1 white spear creature tokens with flying onto the battlefield, and yeah, this one can literally just cost us 3 mana if we've got white to pay. Yeah, Naya's got a ton of efficient spells when it comes to making tokens, and Secure the Waste is a fantastic instant speed one. It's going to put X/1/1 white warrior creature tokens onto the battlefield, and again, at instant speed, I did mention that you can do some fun combat tricks with this if you really want to, or, you know, just before your turn, you can surprise out of nowhere, make a ton of tokens, and pump your entire team with your commander even further. Speaking of which, you can even utilize your opponent's creatures against them in some way with something like Call the Copper Coats. It's got a strive cost for 1 and a white, and it says choose any number of target opponents, create X/1/1 white human soldier creature tokens for X the number of creatures those opponents control. So with this, you can make a massive army out of nowhere, and then obviously you can pretty easily get to those requirements of, you know, 3 creatures, 6 creatures, 9 creatures, to then just wall up your opponents for a ton of damage with your pumped army. But of course, we've got ways to make our tokens even more impactful. Because, and actually the first card that I am going to bring up is the brand new version of Parallel Lives, and if you haven't seen this one yet, it's pretty fantastic, and it's going to be incredibly expensive being a Judge promo, and yeah, having art with Urza and Mishra. It looks awesome. Regardless, this $45 card for the regular version obviously can be fantastic if you got the budget for it in a token build. It says if an effect would create 1 or more tokens under your control, it creates twice that many of those tokens instead. So yeah, in a build like this one, where you want to make a lot of tokens, just doubling up your tokens, that's going to be pretty incredible. And obviously another very expensive card that can help you do that too, and basically the exact same effect, is Anointing Procession. Yes, again, any kind of a token doubler, whether it's these, Doubling Season, etc., 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 if you've got the budget for them and you really want to invest heavily into this deck and you're willing to pay up for those, they're going to be great in the deck. That being said, a much more budget-friendly card that can really help you out too is Second Harvest. It's an instant for 2 green, and it says for each token you control, create a token that's a copy of that permanent. So instant speed, out of nowhere, you can essentially double up your token army, which again can be a fantastic combat trick or just a fantastic way right before your turn to double your army size out of nowhere, and then you can decimate your opponents. Speaking of decimating your opponents, you also are going to want to consider cards that pump your creatures even further with things like Scale Up, Collect a Blessing, and Unnatural Growth. The vast majority of the tokens that you're going to be making with this deck are probably just going to be 1/1s, so something like Scale Up can be absolutely incredible when you overload it. Because when you overload it, every single one of your creatures are going to have base power and toughness 6/4. So again, if you're taking them up from 1/1s to a 6/4, that's basically +5/+3 just out of nowhere. And again, if your commander's pumping them +3, +0, plus trample, plus vigilance, plus double strike, you're going to be smacking your opponents for an absurd amount. That's what? I mean, each of your creatures would essentially have 9 power, so it would be 18 damage per creature. And speaking of pumping your creatures, a more permanent way to do so is with Collective Blessing. It's an enchantment that says creatures you control get +3/+3, so a very simple but very effective enchantment in this deck. Pumping your token army, or just your army in general. And again, once you meet that requirement for double strike, it's essentially doubly as effective. And speaking of doubling, of course, I've got to bring up Unnatural Growth, which is incredible with this commander. It says at the beginning of each combat, double the power toughness of each creature you control until end of turn. So even just with our commander's pump effect, again, assume that we have, the 9 creatures on the board, we get that +3/+0. Even with just 1/1s, now those are 4/1s, we go to combat, they are doubled to 8 2s. With, of course, again, Vigilance, Trample, and did I mention Double Strike? So 16 damage per creature. And of course, that gets even more ridiculous if you've got other pump effects, like, Collective Blessing, which essentially doubles. You see where this is going. Yeah, I can see this card fitting into a lot of these decks. Now, speaking of which, some other effects that are fantastic for this commander come with cards like Proud Wildbonder and Bow of Nylea. Proud Wildbonder is a 4/3 trample that says, creatures you control with trample you may have this creature assigned its combat damage as though it weren't blocked. So basically now, yeah, trample is a great way to get damage through, but instead of doing that, we just get all of our damage through, which is going to be game ending in a lot of scenarios. And speaking of getting damage through, Bow of Nylea is an incredible card once we've got our team set up. It says attacking creatures you control have Death Touch. And Death Touch works in a fantastic way with both Trample and Double Strike. And actually Vigilance as well, since you can keep your creatures back for blocking, which is great. Regardless, if our creatures have both Trample and Death Touch, we only have to assign 1 point of combat damage to that creature to take it out, and the rest can go through onto an opponent. And then with Double Strike, well, as long as the opposing creature doesn't really have First Strike or, indestructible or whatnot, our creatures are essentially guaranteed to survive combat because they're going to be hitting first. So yeah, each of these cards that help improve our already fantastic keywords that our creatures are going to be getting are great. But of course, in a go-wide strategy like this one, we really want to make sure that we protect our board position, so we're going to be doing so with cards like Dauntless Escort, Ripborn Defenses, and Heroic Intervention. Dauntless Escort is a creature that can help us out. It has Sacrifice Dauntless Escort. Creatures you control gain indestructible until end of turn. So this is a fantastic creature for this deck, and it can just stick around until we really need to use it to save our team. Speaking of saving our team, Rootborn Defenses says, populate, creatures you control gain indestructible until end of turn. So not only can this protect our team at instant speed, but also on top of that, again, in a token strategy, populating can be fantastic. So protect your team and add to your count on the field. And yeah, of course, Heroic Intervention is just a fantastic protection spell. It says permanent you control gain hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. So yeah, it's hard to beat this spell, and I believe it's around $6 or so. Hopefully they reprint it again. Never mind, just checked. It's back up to $9. Yes, please reprint it, Wizards. Regardless, now that we've talked about cards that might fit in a Jetmir deck, let's talk about some commanders that might want Jetmir itself in the 99 of their decks. And the first one that came to my mind was Geared Conclave Exile, which is a fantastic token populate commander. It has, when it enters the battlefield, create a 4/4 green rhino creature token with trample, and whenever it attacks, populate the token enters the battlefield tapped and attacking. So Geared can be a great commander for a go-wide strategy, and yeah, I mean, in a go-wide strategy like this one that can include Jetmir, you can make your creatures even deadlier. And then the other commander that came to my mind that can definitely go wide, it can go wide very, very quickly, is Rith the Awakener. It's a 6/6 flying dragon that says when it deals combat damage to a player, you may pay 2 and a green. If you do, choose a color, then put a 1/1 green sapling creature token onto the battlefield for each permanent of that color. This can really get out of hand in just even one hit, and yeah, it can easily meet that 9 creature requirement to make the most out of Jetmir's pump effects. So your tiny little 1/1 saplings are instead going to be basically, 4 1s with, again, Vigilance, Trample, and Double Strike. Have fun, opponents. But now as this episode is coming to a close, it's time for me to give you my final thoughts on Jetmir Nexus of Revels. I think a lot of players out there are going to be very excited about this combat-centric commander that is all about going wide and just swinging out and dishing out a ton of damage. Again, in these colors, you've got plenty of ways to make a ton of tokens, whether that's, building them up turn after turn after turn, or making a ton at once, or, making a ton of once out of nowhere, so you can just utilize kind of a combat trick again to give your creatures an extra +1/+0 and maybe double strike and wipe out your opponents. There's a lot of exciting things that you can do with this commander. And just like in my previous episode, I mentioned, if you are excited about this commander and might be looking to build around it, you might want to consider picking up certain cards earlier rather than later. There are definitely commanders that get revealed during spoiler season that cause cards to spike pretty quickly. So if you're considering any of the cards I mentioned on this episode, make sure you click that link in the description below. It's got the cards that I mentioned in it just to try to make it easier for you. And with that, the show has come to a close, so it's my turn to hear from you. So the comments below, let me know your thoughts on this episode are, and as always, thanks again and have a good one.